Great to be with you, Pete.
Good to see you again.
Let's hear it for President Whitten. I mean, amazing leadership. She just touched the surface of some of the initiatives she's helped launch here at Indiana University, and she's really taken it to the next level. I know that we have high hopes that Indiana University can see some of the opportunities with this emerging biotech initiative that she referenced, and she is making that possible by positioning the university for success. So, big fan of Bloomington, Indiana, and Indiana University. We just got to keep the football team going. So that's my big
basketball
focus.
too. Don't forget about basketball.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us, and thank you for taking the time to do this conversation.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll tell you what, by the number of questions that we have here, it's clear that people are curious about a lot of different things. So I'm going to try and put them into categories.
Sure.
If that works. So let's start with one of the biggest tariffs. And I want to ask that question in sort of a specific way. I'm going to be transparent here in a way that I probably wouldn't be normally in a situation like this. But
It can be dangerous, I'm told. So.
Yeah. Well, I want to give you an example. I want to give you our example because I think it's not just an example for us, but I think it affects a lot of business the same way. All right, so if you look at our business, Cook, we manufacture 60% of our products in the United States today. The rest is in Europe and Australia. Our industry standard is that 70% in medical devices are manufactured in South America, China, and Vietnam. Okay, so we're flipped. So we're primarily a US-based manufacturing company, which I think the idea is here, right? We want to bring manufacturing jobs, we want to promote that. But the net effect of the tariffs is, so if you look at China, we manufacture our products in the United States to sell to China. We don't manufacture anything. All we're doing is selling there, which is what I think we want. The rest of the industry is manufacturing in South America and selling to China. So we are stuck with this dual sort of hit of not only the tariffs, but the tariffs in China, but our competitors are now able to sell freely into China without any tariffs. And they're growing their jobs in South America to take on that second biggest market. So we are hit with losing the market share in China, along with, for us, about $175 million in additional tariffs a year. Now, we're a $2.5 billion company, so you can do the math, right? So we already are what I think this administration wants the world to be, is a US-based manufacturer.
Yes.
But we're being punished twice. Help me make sense of that.
Yeah. So listen, there are a lot of reasons as someone who's studied economics and has long believed that trade is important to all of our people, especially though here in the heartland, the most manufacturing intensive state in the country, a major ag producer. We rely extensively on access to foreign markets and conversely on many of the inputs for our economy, for manufactured goods. So we benefit from this order net in a pretty extensive way. But President Trump's not wrong that there have been violations of the rules of the economic game, so to speak. China, for a long period of time in particular, has ripped off our intellectual property. They've dumped commodities and other products into our market. And you could go on and on. They're economically coercive behavior, and someone had to respond to this, and President Trump campaigned on this platform of finally taking action, even if that action was disruptive. So that's one reason one could imagine affixing tariffs. Another reason might be a lack of cooperation on issues unrelated to trade or even economics. For example, if the government of Mexico, we feel, is not cooperating sufficiently on fentanyl trafficking and prohibiting those sorts of poisons from entering our country, that might be a rationale. It's actually been cited by the administration for increasing levies on inputs and on their exports and so forth. Not investing in one's own military pursuant to shared treaty obligations. Think of the NATO treaty. The Europeans have consistently failed to do so. So this has been cited from time to time as one of the reasons for tariff policy. The need to reshore. Reshore, let's make this easy. I'll identify something I agree with. The need to reshore particular goods and inputs that are essential to our national security. Think semiconductors, think cranes, the sorts of advanced cranes that are used in our ports. Think ships. So you could imagine trying to incentivize more production here through tariff policy to ensure we bring more strategically national security relevant manufacturing to the United States. The complications exist, and this is where I've consistently encouraged the administration to bring clarity. What is the rationale for each individual country? What does success look like so they have some ability to come into a position of better behavior if the intention isn't to leave them on forever for revenue purposes, but instead to change the behavior of our trade counterparties. And then presumably, if you put forward on paper, in a documented, organized fashion, where you want to end up and the rationale for tariffs on particular countries, presumably there aren't 5 or 6 different reasons that change day to day based on whatever member of the administration is speaking. So I want more certainty, I want more clarity, and my preference would be, but I was an elected president, right? My preference would be is to affix tariffs in a more targeted, sort of deliberate way on a temporary basis with the intention of resetting trade relations and getting back to normal. And so, in the area of biotech, for example, the Europeans have. They've been ripping us off. Think of ag bioscience. They prohibit what they call, still disparagingly think of as frankenfood from coming into their markets. Well, I interpret most of that as anti-competitive behavior. They cannot compete with Hoosier producers. We are too productive. We are too efficient. And they just can't compete. So they have these tariff and non-tariff barriers to protect, I get it, I'm in politics, to protect discrete and vocal political interests in their countries. And President Trump is attempting to create some leverage, and boy, he's done that. He's good at creating leverage. Now I think the next step will be to pocket some of the wins, some of the concessions that are already being made from Vietnam to the EU to others, and then attempt to reset trade relations in a predictable way.
So I think that, I actually all those principles laid out, I agree with. And I think the problem is, as businesses, we're trying to understand how is this going to drive those results? So for example, for us, let's say we wanted to increase from 60% domestic production to 70. Okay, well, we need money to invest that. In order to do that, you have to have some certainty those tariffs are going to stick, which they could be negotiated at any different time. They're executive order based, et cetera. So you're left with that. The other thing is, though, the money we had to invest in those plants is going out the door in the form of a tax and a tariff, and to the tune of $175 million. So how as businesses, understand the political side of it, but how should we be thinking about this? Is this a negotiation that we just need to wait for and try to live through? Or do we need to start planning differently and figure out this is going to be a whole new world business model?
I mean, I think you're making my point, Pete, and your line of inquiry is very well received. This is the same point I'm making to the administration. We need more clarity about what the end game is. We need more clarity about how long we expect this to last, et cetera. I think, it's amazing what our entrepreneurs and innovators and investors can do if you tell them where the bar is set, what their hurdle rate is, as the financiers call it, for a given investment. But you need to tell them that. You need to give them enough information so they can calculate, where to put their money, where to direct their energies, what markets to target, et cetera. But if your plan either is too vague or changes too frequently, you don't give market actors that clarity. And so I can play a constructive role. I can lament the perceived deficiencies in any plan. I think Biden had all kinds of deficiencies, and it's common for the minority party to publicly lament the deficiencies, right, for somebody who's not in your party. Or I can say, listen, I'm a senior Republican senator from the state of Indiana, and I agree with 90% of what the president's attempting to do, and maybe on that 10%, I discreetly talk to the president and share concerns and try and bring clarity to things, and then I can help all of you when you approach me and say, can you help on my priority, right? Because otherwise, you burn those bridges and you lose the ability to be effective. So I want to be effective. And I think that as it relates to trade, the best thing I can do to be effective is just to articulate. I mean, this is public, right? We got cameras in the back. I have to assume this is going to be, in the New York Times, is to articulate with more specificity and whatever level of vigor is required to administration officials, the urgency of bringing more clarity to this situation. Because I do think it's important.
Let me ask you this. You were one of the members that signed off on a bipartisan bill to try to change the way tariffs are administered, and trying to bring some of that authority back to the Congress. Maybe explain that and your thoughts on that issue.
Listen, I like to think I don't have a selective reading of the Constitution. I mean, we all operate to some extent through guided reasoning, but you try and discipline yourself not to have a confirmation bias and all the rest. And in the Constitution, it very clearly lays out that Congress is charged with overseeing foreign commerce and levying duties. So I signed on to a piece of legislation that would reclaim powers that previous generations of senators and members of Congress gave away, and I'll give a not too favorable impression as to why they gave tariff powers away to the president and all sorts of other powers, war-making powers, all kinds of things. You find in Congress it's very easy to give speeches. It's a lot harder to take stands on difficult issues. Sometimes that involves hard votes. I don't know that I've taken many votes where I felt like the right policy outcome was hard. It's explaining it to your constituents that can be hard, right? So you don't want to be explaining all the time. And it's even harder to actually solve problems, to come up with solutions and solve problems. Hell of a lot easier just to see what the poll numbers show, give a speech consistent with the poll numbers, and then campaign on your membership in the tribe. And so because of this inescapable dynamic, and mixed together with a media environment in which all of us are inclined to just marinate in views we already agree with, kind of echo chambers, we have seen over the years members of Congress give away all kinds of powers to the president, and then this is a pet peeve of mine, right? Then come home and rail at unelected, unaccountable bureaucrats or unwise decisions of the president without trying to reclaim the powers that ought to be the people's powers operating through their elected representatives anyway. So, like so many of the questions I get, they don't lend themselves to 30-second sound bites, but that's how I feel.
So you would advocate for the Congress having more authority over tariffs and how that would work?
Yeah.
And how would it work? So is it so the president can implement tariffs, but they have to be ratified by the Congress at some level?
That's how this piece of legislation works. And I think it's a good construct, right? You could imagine that the president needs power, authority, energy in the executive, right? Alexander Hamilton. He needs the power to act quickly and deliberately on matters of foreign policy. And tariffs are sort of an interesting animal. They're at once, as President Trump is demonstrating, they're an instrument of foreign policy, but also kind of a revenue measure. So you might want to give him the ability to act nimbly and boldly, but then after a month period of time, 2 months period of time, Congress must speak and affirm that it's wise or unwise. I think that's a good approach. You could speak earlier if there's a strong feeling one way or the other, but you must speak so that your constituents can hold you accountable too.
One of the other issues that I think as businesses we sort of understand.
Speaking of accountability,
Yeah. You can hear there's people asking for
it's the
accountability.
sound of freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think you can,
I mean that.
as businesses, we sort of looked at the cost-cutting efforts in government and the modernization of government as a good thing. We all as businesses do that every day.
Yes.
Right? We have to looking at are our systems efficient? Are they modern? Are they up to date? Are we serving our customers the right way? So I think all of us in business understand that need. How do you view the work of DOGE? And there's a lot of questions about that. How do you view their work? Is it effective? Is it doing what you hoped it would do?
Let me tell you, nothing is there aren't many things that I've encountered since I've been an elected official that are more popular among my constituents than DOGE. Waste, fraud, and abuse. Except in Bloomington.
Yeah.
So listen, it's not to say that the majority is right, right? I mean, this is why our system's awesome, and why you need leaders that, at least from time to time, speak with great candor. Here's my view: the American people need to earn trust back from their institutions. Our leaders have really failed from many of our educational institutions around the country to our corporate America and the C-suite to some leaders in organized religion to certainly government. And one of the ways we can do this, probably the most accessible and powerful way for regular Americans so we can earn trust back, is to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse. And this is literally the labor of this generation and future generations that's being thrown away by inefficiency and neglect and a failure of oversight and all the rest. So most of what Elon Musk is doing, I think, falls in that category. That said, I don't deny that some things have been delayed. Other things have been cut that should not be. And here again, I've been trying to, mediate between the feedback I'm getting from constituents about very important programs and unintentional outcomes, and the DOGE team. Elon, commendably, has given senators like myself his cell phone, and I get in touch with him. I carry your concerns. Not every day. He'd stop paying attention to Todd Young's text messages if I did. I asked Elon to come to a Republican Senate lunch. Elon came. He briefed all Republican senators. So I hope this calms down somewhat, right? So does Elon. So does Elon. He shared that with us. But I do think this is part of an effort to try and build, at least among a lot of the country, some trust back that we're being attentive to the waste. It's hard to do other important things when it comes to our budgetary situation, which I hope we have an opportunity to discuss today, if you're not going after the 250-year-old recipient of a Social Security check, right?
So let me ask a question. And we do hear, we have protesters and people who are asking questions. And let me ask, we'll get to the economic discussion, but I want to ask the question that I saw a lot of signs as I was coming in. I think people are concerned about cuts to Medicare and Medicaid. So how do you feel? That's a big issue for people. It's an important program. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so my view is that if we're going to talk about science and the importance of following science, let's embrace all hard disciplines. How about math? And the math says that our federal budget is broken, that we keep running deficits and adding to the debt every year, and that this is not sustainable. That's what the math shows, the arithmetic. And here again, it's been an abdication of leadership. We can't keep lying about the state of these programs. They're not sustainable. Does it take bravery to speak facts to one's constituents? It shouldn't. Are we so weak as a civic culture? I don't believe we are. I think you want to be treated like adults, collectively. Whoever might watch this at home. And so I just prefer to treat people like adults and say, these programs aren't sustainable. Social Security, we know what the levers are. It's retirement age, it's the cost of living adjustment, it's eligibility, it's tax levels. And so let's put everything on the table. Let's make it sustainable so that we can have some measure of certainty about what our real policy options are. Otherwise, what are we doing in each of these different programs? We're borrowing money, which is to say we are taxing the future generations. We're debasing the value of the dollar. We are requiring future politicians at some point to have to increase various tax rates. You don't want to wait until the markets lose faith in your ability to pay back debts, though. There's been some conversation about this in recent days with a perceived change in risk premium on our treasury instruments. You don't want to get to a point where it's that on steroids. And then suddenly, in an emergency and ill-considered way, we have to we have to do things very quickly. Guess who's going to get hurt? It's going to be like people on fixed incomes. It's going to be people of the most modest means who will get hurt in those scenarios as we hurt them. And so let's be responsible in each of these programs. So you ask my position. I favor bringing these programs into balance. I would personally would give special dispensation wherever one can persuade enough colleagues to do so for people of low income, people of modest means. But I'm not going to allow the perfect to be the enemy of the good. And for me, the good is starting to address our fiscal issues. Now, let me just, one quick last thing. The number we should look at, back to math here, is debt as a proportion of GDP, debt to GDP. So it's going to take a number of years for us continued accumulation of debt and hopefully coaxing more economic growth out of our system so that we can stabilize our debt and eventually start to pay it off over a period of time. It's analogous to what someone would do if their consumer finances were really out of whack, right? If you got a massive credit card debt, you don't try and pay it all back in 1 year. You don't stop eating. Hopefully, you continue to put gas in the car and all the rest. So that's how we need to think of this. And there are things that we're embarked on right now. Growth-oriented tax reform.
Can I ask a question about that?
Of course, regulatory reform. I would continue to open up foreign markets for trade. There are things we can do to coax more growth out of the economy too. Please, go ahead. Sorry,
so
I'm not intending to filibuster, but you ask the question of all questions about these programs. I think it's important, again, adults here, to contextualize what we're talking about.
Look, I genuinely appreciate that, and that's why I don't want to interrupt you, because too many of these things become placards, they become tweets, they become slogans that aren't a nuanced conversation. These situations are not going to be solved on a tweet or on X. Yeah. You're going to have long conversations, and we're not all going to agree about it. But I do appreciate that you are willing to sit here and ask the hard questions, answer the hard questions, and understand that not everybody's going to agree with it. But at least we can talk about the reality of it. So I very much appreciate that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Let's turn to the
and DOGE should not become an excuse not to deal with the hard stuff either. A lot of folks in my party want to do that. DOGE is going to save $2 trillion. Show me. And oh, by the way, if you claim it's going to save $2 trillion, are we still investing in higher ed? We still investing in research? We still investing in basic infrastructure? Are we investing in the future to grow that denominator? Because there are a lot of collective investments we make as well. And how are we going to build the military? Yeah. So I just want everyone to know I'm under no illusions about how many savings DOGE is going to yield us, and no one else should be either. That doesn't mean we shouldn't harvest the savings that make sense that are offered out of it. And so I'll take a look at whatever we have to memorialize through statute, going forward. Sorry,
well,
go ahead.
I think all of that's going to come together. All you just talked about is going to come together in this next budget bill. And so we're talking about massive tax cuts. We're talking about all the things you just talked about, but we're going to have to at some point balance this budget. What do you see as the benefits? Do you support the current bill? And do you think there are benefits?
The current budget?
Resolution.
Budget resolution? Yeah, listen, I support saving tons of money. That's all you have in a budget resolution. It's just, if you look at it, I didn't really understand this when I first ran for the U.S. House. The budget resolution's like a couple of numbers and it's an outline. So we haven't really gotten to the hard work, right? And so do I support saving $1 trillion in isolation? Yeah, I do. Let's see what sort of work, and then it gets harder. Then it gets a lot harder, right? Yeah. And I've never voted on a perfect bill. Yeah.
So if you were to say my top 3 priorities coming out of that budget discussions, what do you want to see? Is it tax cuts? Is it investment in military? Is it investment in biosciences? What is the top 3 priorities for you?
So I don't want the largest tax increase in history. Everyone's thinking straw man argument right there. No, that's what we're headed for. If the current tax law, the 2017 so-called Trump tax cuts, the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, were to expire, many of those provisions as we approach year's end, that would be the largest tax increase in American history. And one has to...
Although I got to tell you, it feels like the largest tax increase we've ever seen is the tariffs. So right now for us, it feels like the largest tax increase we've ever seen.
Yeah. So, so we're hearing this argument from folks, which is, well, we got to go even deeper on the tax cuts now. And I'm kind of like, oh, God. So we want to incentivize growth, savings, and investment in tax reform. That's what I see. Now, there are all kinds of other priorities, social priorities, that we try and advance, and civic priorities through the tax code. Affordable housing, that's social and civic. It's also economic, you could argue, but that's important. The redistribution of some income and wealth from some people to other people. We do this through the tax code, right? And so all these other things, but growth, savings, and investment are my lodestars, because if you have growth, you have savings, you have investment, it solves a lot of other problems, okay? So the challenge is, how do you, once ensure the economy is growing amidst certain headwinds, macroeconomic headwinds, but not blow a massive hole in the debt, right? You still want to stabilize that stuff. You got a numerator and a denominator, debt to GDP. So, you're trying to strike a balance there, and doesn't lend itself to a formula. Trust me, I've asked the smartest economists in the world, and this is uncharacteristic, I found, of economists. They always have answers. They're so frequently wrong, but they always have answers. They don't even have an answer to this one, right? And so my view is, we got to look at the spending. We got to look at the mandatory programs. We got to coax savings out of that as much as we can, consistent with the political environment, whatever that will bear. Should we have young, healthy, adult males who are receiving Medicaid, single, should we require them to get into the labor force to help grow our economy and maybe not promise them forever Medicaid? Hell yeah, we should, right? So we can agree on that, at least as Republicans. So why don't we agree on that? And then can we find all kinds of other savings within the Medicaid program? There are gimmicks state use to drive up their reimbursement in various hospitals, and it's basically a corrupt bargain between a state legislature and governor's office and certain hospitals, just to pull more Medicaid money down into their state when they should be asking their own constituents for tax dollars to pay for some of their health care for poor people in their state. And so that's not, so all this stuff that we ought to be able to agree on, let's go ahead and take care of that. If I get that, I'll be more generous on the tax reform. This is the leverage I'm using. If I don't get any cooperation on that, I'm going to be very stubborn on the tax stuff. So I'm sort of playing one dynamic off against the other. And so far it's worked. I feel like I've moved the conversation in a more fiscally responsible but still growth-friendly direction.
Yeah, and
you tell me if my approach is the wrong approach, because I am open to, but we're running out of options here. We're running out of options.
Yeah. So as somebody with a military background, you're probably as knowledgeable as anybody on the state of our military and the state of our readiness. The proposal is a significant increase, as I understand it, on military spending. Do you think that's a good idea? What is the right level of military spend?
I think we probably need more, but it's hard because we haven't given the Pentagon the level of significant scrutiny that I think it requires. Look at all these other departments of government, and they are being scrutinized for waste, for fraud, for abuse. Like, I don't know what everyone else's experience has been that has served in the military, but I saw more waste, more abuse, not a lot of fraud, but a lot of waste and abuse in the U.S. military. Let's root all that stuff out. And maybe we can use some of that to modernize. Moreover, we have to stop spending money on generations-old platforms that are of significantly less relevance in today's military. So I'm not on the Armed Services Committee, so I don't have great clarity. To some extent, all of us in Congress depend on people who are on these particular committees, but I am hoping that they can tell us how we transition out old platforms into new ones, how we can root out waste. And I've told Elon, I said, I can't wait till you get in the Pentagon. There may be an opportunity to turn the Pentagon into a triangle, right? That said, the world's more dangerous now than I think it's ever been in my lifetime, from Ukraine to Iran and throughout the Middle East to Taiwan and the South China Sea. U.S. has to stay involved. There's no other option. And we need to encourage others to get more involved, people who share our values, but we have to stay involved for a period of time. They're looking for our leadership, so that's going to take continued investment.
So one of the other big categories.
You didn't pin me down on a dollar figure because frankly, it's too early. They're going through this process right now.
But I think I agree. I think you need to make sure we're spending the right amount of money on the right things, and then we can talk about whether it's more or less. So their big topic of conversation here on these questions is immigration. And do you feel the administration is on the right path?
Deporting criminals should not be controversial. I feel like we.
No, please don't disrupt the senator.
I'll get to the question.
In the next breath, I was about to cover my due process base, so I feel like.
Ma'am, we're going to ask you to leave if you continue to disrupt this event. The rest of us want to hear what he has to say. You can go outside and protest with the others if that's what you want to do.
Thanks,
We're going to listen to the senator, please.
As I was saying, I feel like we need to deport criminals. I feel like if
do we have a security person?
we're going to like violently agree. I'm not going to say it now. I'm not going to reward that by saying it. We're going to violently agree. I mean, how absurd is that? So, and then I feel like after we have maintained a level of deterrence as it relates to our southern border, we should embark on legal immigration reform as well. It's been a long time since we've rationalized our public policy environment and thought about what workers we want to invite into our country to help grow our economy and play a meaningful and an important part in American life. And so my hope is we can go further than just securing the border, that we can also pivot to legal immigration reform and have what I think will be an important but obviously tough debate about what exactly that should look like. What should our guest worker programs look like? What should our student visa programs look like? high-skilled workers, are there opportunities to invite more of those into some of our left-behind communities to help grow those regional and local economies? I have a proposal to do this, which I offered with Senator Joe Manchin last year, and we'll be reintroducing some. So I think there are great opportunities. There's no question, however, that we are still in the process of trying to restore deterrence.
So I want to wrap up, and last question here. What's your hope? I see I get dismayed sometimes because I think we've turned into yelling at each other. We've turned into firing off tweets. We've turned into losing the understanding of the complexity of these issues.
Yes.
In our discussions. How do we get that back?
Listen, this is mostly outside of our wheelhouse. The federal government has some role in like pre-K through 14. So I think that's a piece of it, is making sure that we continue to improve our education system, and our young people get used to wrestling with facts and beliefs that are uncomfortable to them, and they remain open to views that are contrary to their previously held views. I mean, we used to call it small L liberalism. You know, it's just like how knowledge evolves and how people learn. And I just see a lot of resistance to that. I see a lot of resistance to small L liberalism on many of our college campuses. And so we need to revitalize that. You try and do it through modeling positive behavior, but each of us can only do so much. But we can, you know, I have a role to play. Our media, I think we need to return to an ethic that journalists are there and they have responsibilities. There's a journalistic and a professional ethic, not just to pursue their own like self-interest, commercial interest, to feed people what's popular. We see that on some of our cable news channels. I can watch certain unnamed cable news channels. I could spend 2 hours and learn nothing. And it's just mindless drivel. And so it really handicaps us civically. I talk to people on a regular basis. I've had to start watching some of these news channels, and there's some that, you know, on the left, some on the right, and I have to watch them periodically to know what sort of talking points and ideas I'm going to get from my constituents so that I can be prepared to counter them. They'll think I'm civically illiterate if I hadn't heard about a UFO or something. and so I need to be aware of that, and really good people, smart critical thinking people. But if you're exposed to enough of this garbage that aims to incite and entertain but not educate, then it really doesn't help you too much. So I think that's a broader change, and it's not just, I don't mean to pick on just certain journalists. It happens in all the professions. Attorneys, many attorneys are losing the ethic of like they're a member of a profession, and so they have responsibilities outside of just making money. And I don't know how we get all of that back, but I think each of us can, like, you know, it's an ethic.
Well, I guess I would say we start by having conversations like this.
Yeah.
I think there have to be more long-form discussions that people get to understand the nuances of it. We need to be ready to absorb that. So I just want to say thank you for taking your time. Look, I followed your career. I don't really agree with everything you do, but I agree with a lot of it. And I agree, what I really appreciate is having an Indiana representative in the United States Congress who is thoughtful, who is practical, and is working hard for the best of the American people. Now, we may all agree with it, but I very much appreciate your approach. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Pete. Appreciate it. Thanks, buddy. Thanks. Good job. Thank you.